and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. I'm going to continue today what I started last week and I didn't quite finish, and that's these instruments, and some of them will look familiar to you, but what I really want to get into on this session is how these instruments, some of them have reeds to them, and what makes a reeded instrument different from a non-reeded instrument. I've shown you a lot of instruments that are woodwinds that don't have reeds, and I like playing them. One of the reasons I like playing them so much is the fact that they just play. You know, I used to tell a pastor friend of mine, it's not hard to play a woodwind. You put it in your mouth and it plays. He says, for you it's not hard. If you don't have a reed to mess with and you don't have to worry about a reed, it makes it even easier to play a woodwind. So I'm going to go over the clarinet once again, and as we do this, we're going to get into reeds and how reeds work. So here's a clarinet. You may have seen this last segment or something similar. This is the mouthpiece. This mouthpiece here has got a ligature and screws and a reed which you can't see. This is the barrel, the upper body, the lower body, and the bell. It's a very interesting instrument. Now, here's the instrument, and here's the mouthpiece. I'm going to be getting into it. I have some mouthpieces here. This is the mouthpiece without a reed. When you put a reed on it, the reed covers this little opening right here, which is where the reed vibrates against the mouthpiece when you put it in your mouth and you play it. And this reed is usually made out of wood, and this one is, and it's made out of cane. I'll get into that. The ligature goes over it, screws the mouthpiece, the reed to the mouthpiece, and then when you put it in your mouth, that reed vibrates against the mouthpiece, and that's where you get your tone. A little more complicated than the non-reeded instruments. Now, this I have shown you before, but I'll just go over it quickly. The B-flat clarinet, the alto clarinet with the neckpiece, mouthpiece, neckpiece, body. This is the fingerboard, these are the side keys, this is the bell. Same over here, but the dip is different. You might wonder, why do they make the dip of the neckpiece bigger or smaller? On the saxophone, you get it all looped up. Well, the reason is the fact that if they kept it straight, it would be so huge you couldn't play it. But if they can fold up those tubes and make them smaller so they don't take up so much space, you're going to get the same amount of air through it as if you kept them straight. So you can get the differences in the tone and the depth of the tone that have the instrument in a smaller space, and you're still getting the same kind of quality of tone. So it's designed that way. Now, here is a picture, if I can get this out here. Okay, this I want to show you. This is a clarinet, and this is a diagram of the clarinet. This is a fingering chart. One thing I really like about this is the keys are so clear. You can see them, and the keys are all numbered. The reason they're numbered is the fact that if you're looking at a fingering chart and you see a note, and it's showing you how to play that note, it'll tell you which keys to put down, but the keys are numbered for that purpose. So key number 8 goes down, or key number 4 goes down. This would be the upper body of the clarinet. These would be the open tone holes that you would put your finger on. This would be the side keys, and these would be for the lower notes. But you see that piece that goes right there? That would pull off. This is upper body, this is lower body, and all of these little keys are there, so you can easily see them. This is the register key in the back. They're all numbered, and you have some side keys over here. It is a difficult instrument to play, but it's also a fascinating instrument, and it takes a little more time to learn it than with other instruments. Now, let me get to the key. This is a flute, and I've shown you part of a diagram, but let's get to this again. This is a ligature that goes on the mouthpiece. This is the reed, this is the open mouthpiece, and you put one against the other. I'll be demonstrating that, so you'll be able to see that anyway, but I wanted to include a picture of it. Now, let's get to some other pictures. Here's another picture of the mouthpiece without anything on it. It's not that great a picture, but I wanted you to see it so you'd be able to get some more, get more familiar with it. And I guess, okay, here's another mouthpiece. This goes to a saxophone. It's one of my saxophones. And on it, you can see there's a cap. You put the cap over the mouthpiece to keep the reed and the mouthpiece safe, and you take the cap off when you need to play it. Here's another mouthpiece and cap that comes from my own saxophones, one of my own saxophones. I have a few. I think I've got about 7 saxophones now. That was my first instrument that I played after piano. Here is the underside of the mouthpiece. You can see how the ligature has been screwed in. And this is a black reed. It's called a plastic-coated reed. And I'll explain that because I'll show it to you. And this is the cap that goes over it. I like the plastic-coated reeds, I really do, because it makes things much easier to play. This is a tenor saxophone, mouthpiece, ligature, the screws to the ligature. This is the neck piece that dips so you can, because if it went straight out, it would be quite long. You might not even be able to reach the keys. Fingerboard right here, side keys, and bell. This is a tenor sax. They really are very large. I have one tenor in my array of saxophones. This is a baritone saxophone, and this I want to mention. It is huge. Look at all of the looping here, because if you kept it straight, it would be so tall you couldn't play it. So they loop it around, and then you get the necessary tubing that you have to have in order to get the tone, but it is in a smaller space. Your mouthpiece and your neck piece and your bell. The bell goes way up to the upper part of the instrument. But this is like a long, long tube, and you get a deep tone. If it was short, you wouldn't get the deep tone. The longer the tube, the deeper the tone, and so the instruments are designed for it. Now these, I've had these in before, the song flute and the tonette. They're very, very similar. Similar in mouthpiece, similar in design, but the tone is a little different. The song flute does not have a bell, the tonette does, and then you have your labium for the same, really high up on the mouthpiece. And they're really nice instruments to play. Then you have the sassotos, and you have the sassoto is right here. I have a number of them. And then you have your penny whistles. I have a number of those too. Now, what I want to do, because I want to spend some time, I'm going to stop it here, and I'm going to show you the mouthpieces and explain to you how mouthpieces are made and what the reeds are. Now, saxophones, clarinets, oboes and bassoons are going to be reeded instruments. The oboe and the bassoon are going to be double reeds, and when you have a double reed, you would have like 2 reeds against each other, and they would vibrate against each other. Now these are plastic-coated reeds, but if I had a bassoon, or it would be like something like this. Now you have to keep these reeds really wet. If you don't, they won't play. With the oboe and the bassoon, you have to keep them wet. And so some players will actually have special jars in which they carry water. And if they're not playing because maybe they have a few measures where they don't have to play, or maybe they're not playing because it's a certain piece they're not playing, they keep those in the jars of water. Then when it comes time for them to play again, they take them out. They're already wet and they can play. It's not so bad for the single reeds, because the single reeds are going to be the saxophone and the clarinet. You do have to keep them wet, but you don't have to put them in water all the time. You just keep them in your mouth and keep them damp that way. So here is a mouthpiece to a saxophone. Actually, it's one of mine. If I pull off the cap, here's the cap. They can be yellow, they can be silver, but the whole purpose is to protect the mouthpiece. Here's the mouthpiece that does not have a reed in it. So if you can see that, it's all black. Because it's all black, it's hard to catch it. But there's no reed in it. It does have the ligature on it. I'm going to take the ligature off by unscrewing it. There are 2 screws in it, and I'll just unscrew it, And then I'll slip the ligature off. And here's the mouthpiece without ligature, without anything on it. I'm just trying to find good. Here, this is good. Yeah, you can see as I hold it, you can see the opening in it. And it's also flat. And you can see the opening. This is where the reed is going to go. Now, I would take a reed, and most reeds are cane. I would put the reed on it, the flat side of the reed, and you know the flat side because it's going to be marked what the strength of the reed is. This is a wooden reed. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. This is a wooden reed, and they're mostly made out of cane. A cane reed is a reed that's like a stem from a plant that's very, very close to being like a bamboo plant. And this stem has the wood, and it's made, and reeds are made out of it. Most reeds are made like that. On the flat side, you would have the strength of the reed, which can go from a very low strength to like 1 to about 5 or 6. Most people play in the 2 or 3 range. I always like to have reeds that were marked about 2 to 2.5. So 2 is a little soft, but 2.5 is all right. 3 is getting quite stiff. So I would take the flat part of that reed and I would put it against the flat part of this mouthpiece. And I would put the ligature. Now the ligature has a wide side and it has a narrower side. The wide side I've got that you're looking at, and the narrower side is not as big. On the other side, I would put it down carefully over the top of the instrument, of the mouthpiece, and I would unscrew it so it would be able to slide down. Now this ligature is a little small. Let me show you another one here so you can get the sizes. Okay, so here's a ligature. We'll pretend there's a reed on it. I take the ligature off. I put a small reed in, the correct size, whatever that correct size is. Let me try this again. I think this is going to be too big. It depends, the size depends upon the instrument that you're playing. Then I make sure that that reed is at the top of the instrument, or the top of the mouthpiece. If your reed is too stiff and you want it a little bit softer, you can actually pull that in. You can pull that, so that there's a little opening there. And I'm going to show this to you with a cane reed because it's going to be easier to see. If I have a tear on top, that's where it should be. Now, if it's a little too stiff and I want it a little softer, I can pull it down and just a tiny bit. I mean, we're not talking even a fraction of an inch, just enough to soften it. And if I want it stiffer, I can put it up a little bit, and that will make it stiffer. Well, cane reeds are wood, and you can actually shave them. You can take, if it's too stiff, you can actually take a razor blade and just take and shave it a little on the top and make it a little softer that way. You usually buy these reeds in packages, and when you have them in a package, you can take each one of them and you can hold it up to the light like I'm doing now, and I can look at it, and I can see, and I don't think there's any way the camera can pick this up, but I can see that it's lighter colored on top, and it gradually gets a little darker because the reed's going to get a little thicker as it gets down toward the middle. The lightest part will be on top. Now, this would be a good reed. How do I know that? Because as I look at it, there's no lumps and bumps. It's an even thickness. It just gradually gets even. It gradually gets thicker, so it's a good reed. If it had a little bump, so it wasn't even, I would assume that wouldn't be a good reed, and I probably wouldn't even try playing it. So this is a good reed. Now, these reeds that are cane only last for about 25 hours of playing time, and then you have to change them. And for beginning students that are always banging their instruments around, they will chip and they will crack. When they chip and crack, then they're not as good, and at some point you just can't use them anymore. But you have to keep replacing selling them. So you can get them in boxes and check them out. Order it the strength that you want. I would usually order a 2.5. Now you also have plastic coated reeds. The plastic coated reeds is, let's see, I want to get one of this. Oh, let me take this one out. You get cases for these reeds too, otherwise you're going to destroy them. So here is a plastic coated reed. The plastic, it looks black. That's the color of the plastic. It is a cane reed. It is a wood reed. It has a level of plastic on it, and on both sides. What I like about these is that you can put them on the instrument and play them. Now you can't see how thick it is or how thin it is or anything like that. You can't see through the plastic, but you don't constantly have to keep them wet. You put them in your mouth and they're ready to go. And they're good quality tone, not too hard to play, and I really like the plastic coated reeds. The cane reeds are considered to be the best. This is basically a cane reed with plastic on it. Then I wanted to show you what's called a berry reed. This is just a plastic reed. So I'll take this off, take the reed off, and you can actually see through it. This is a reed, a plain reed that's pure plastic. All it is plastic. It's shaped like a reed, it plays like a reed, it vibrates like a reed, and it's plastic. Now it looks dark on the monitor, but it actually is a clear plastic. I don't know if there's any way I can show. You can see the size, how it gradually gets thicker like any reed does, but I can see through it. I don't know as you can, but I can see through it. And I know it looks grayish on the monitor here, but it is a clear plastic. Now, the difficulty with these reeds, I mean, they last forever. I could use one for 25 years and never change it, but they're hard to play. They can't vibrate like normal wood does, although they do vibrate some or you wouldn't get a tone. So they're harder to play, and the tone is not as good. So you have the cane reeds, which are the best. You have the plastic coated reeds, which I think are very good too, and they last a lot longer because of the fact that the plastic protects them. And then you have the berry reeds. It looks more clear as I hold it up to my face than it did when I was holding it to the side. Now you can see it really is clear, is what I'm telling you. And once again, since this is one of my saxophones, you take the reed, the back side of it will mark the stiffness of it and usually who made it, what company made it, and here's the mouthpiece. And there's a flat side to the mouthpiece. You put the reed on the mouthpiece, and I wished I could show you more clearly, but I have to look at it as I'm doing it. You get it to the top where it's supposed to be. Try to hold it around like that. And then you take the ligature, and you take it, I'm going to unscrew it a little. You take the wider piece, and you put it on the mouthpiece, and you get them all lined up, and then you screw it in place. The screws will hold it in place. That's what I'm doing now. And then what I do, and I teach my students to do it, I unscrew the top screw a little bit, not a lot, just a little bit, like maybe a half a twist. And the reason I do that is that it helps the reed to vibrate a lot better if you just have that a little bit looser, not very loose. You don't want the reed falling off, but just a little bit looser. Now I want to mention something about embouchure. The embouchure of the, and I've got more to show you, but I'll have to do it next time because I'm not going to have time to do it. The embouchure, I've mentioned that. The embouchure is the mouth, the muscles around your mouth, and how you hold these muscles in a certain position in order to play the instrument. So if I were to play the brass, this is a trombone mouthpiece. This is not woodwind, but this, I do have a trombone. This comes from my trombone, and you can see this is a trombone mouthpiece. If I were to play the trombone, and I'm not skilled in trombone, I would put this up to my mouth like this. And there would be a way that I would hold my lips around it and then tongue it and blow into it. The embouchure is the muscles that I use. Now, for a woodwind instrument, let's say this, I put it in my mouth, and I can squeak the mouth, the woodwind, the reed, you know, it's working when you do that. I always do that if I'm going to play a woodwind just to make sure it's playing. But it's the position of the mouth. Teeth on the mouthpiece, lips over the bottom teeth, the muscles squeezed kind of shut, and then you play. So the definition of an embouchure is just the way that you hold the muscles of your mouth when you have either the instrument up to your lips like you do with the flute, or in your mouth like you do when you're playing saxophones and clarinets, or in the flutes when you blow across it, your flute is down here and you're blowing across it. Whatever you do when you're playing, holding your muscles in place as you blow, and then what you do is that gives you the tone. That makes the mouthpiece vibrate, that makes the reeds vibrate, or in the case of a recorder, you get vibration in the instrument itself as you're tonguing it and moving the air through it. So that's what the embouchure is. Now, what else do I want to show you here? I don't want to leave anything out. I'm going to show you, I think I'll bring this back next time. Here's my bamboo saxophone. And the bamboo has the mouthpiece carved into it, so there's no adjustment. If I put a mouthpiece on an instrument, there is a way for me to adjust it so it's a little to the left or the right or however I need to adjustment. With these here, they're carved into the mouthpiece, and the ligature is already set kind of in place. You cannot take the ligature off. I can unscrew it, and there's a reed here, and I can slip the reed in and out, but I can't take the ligature off, and I can't move the mouthpiece for any kind of an adjustment if I need to make an adjustment to get a better tone. Other instruments you can do it, but you can't do it with these. I've got 2 or 3 of these instruments with the mouthpiece carved in, and that's the difficulty with them in playing them, is that there is no adjustment. I will unscrew, this is only 1 screw, and I will unscrew it and take this reed out. I wish you could see everything I'm doing, but I have to watch myself. And you see, this is the mouthpiece. The opening to the mouthpiece, but you can't slip that off. And if I slip this off, there's a good chance I'm not going to get it back. And there's only 1 screw. So it does limit what you're able to do. I have a couple of instruments like this. I have a xylophone like this, and I have brought it in before. But this is bamboo. It's made with strips of bamboo wrapped around each other. You can see as I hold it. You can see the strips. Yeah, that's good. And it's specially treated. The reason, and it's treated inside and out. I was looking in the inside of the bell. It's treated inside and out. And the reason, I mean, it's got like a little glaze on it, a little covering on it. Reason so it won't get bugs. Bamboo could have a problem with bugs. So it treated so it won't get buggy. You know, there aren't any bugs on this, and there never will be. So it has a little glint and a little shine, but it's all basically bamboo. So I'm going to close it here. We have run out of time. Please join me next time, and we'll probably finish with this.